Well, this is a lesson combining flowers with shapes in the background. Usually I work with squares or rectangles, but this is something I just sort of came to me in the middle of the night. It was really fun. Why don't you do something as simple as just some stripes in the background? It was about the time I was designing a Christmas card. So you can see, I don't know, it just kind of reminds me of Christmas paper or something. But you can see this path back here with the red, how each of these shapes, you can follow that path through there. So this has a warm dominance, even though there's some blues and purples. And later when we get into the background shapes, it's really going to be fun because every time you change a color, you have to go through a harmonic change. So like this yellow going into the blue, you get a green as a transitional color. Then you end up with blue, and if you want to change it into red, you go into a purple and then into a red. So I think there's a lot to be learned just doing these background shapes because they're like the colors of the rainbow. They all have to just follow through like that. And then how wide these stripes are makes no difference, just whatever you want to do. I just try to make the shapes interesting so that you don't have tangents, like you don't have these tips at some point where the line goes through it. You try to have the tips of the flowers kind of in the middle or somewhere positioned in these background stripes. Here's another one. This one has a green dominance, and again the Christmas theme. I added some dark petals in the background, which give it an even nicer look. I like it better. See how this one's kind of flat looking? And then I decided to add these dark petals. I do like that a lot better. Again, the greens, if you'll notice how the greens kind of connect as your eye goes through. So they start on the edge, connect, come down here, connect, and go up here. The warm colors in the background relate to the pinks in the flower. So the whole thing is, I try to coordinate the whole thing. Here I made some of the stripes a lot narrower. There's quite a variety. Stripes are entirely up to you. Here's another one. Just again, some variety in the stripes. Then I got to thinking, why can't I do this with a diagonal? It's a square paper, so we just turned it on the diagonal here, and diamonds are very popular today. Now I haven't finished this painting, but again you can see I'm working with this warm path going through here. I've also combined collage paper with it because I love these little textures that appear and disappear in the background. So let's get started. This is my drawing. And this is an example of what it could look like when it's finished. This one I have in the book. And again, you can see it has a very cool dominance. So I stayed really focused on the cool colors to pop out the white flower. But I think the one I'm going to do today, I'm going to give it an entirely different look. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with just wetting it completely. So we'll start with the back. I did my drawing using an HB pencil on 140-pound cold pressed paper. And that is my favorite paper to use, hands down, because we're working with a layered technique and we want those colors to get locked into the paper so that when we come back and paint another layer on top, we know those colors are going to be secure. They're not going to move, they're not going to reactivate, they're just going to sit there. Beautiful, beautiful, nice and wet. Okay, now we're going to start with some free-form color. And notice how I didn't put my lines in yet. That's important. Whatever you do, don't put your lines in. What it'll do is it'll inhibit you. And you'll think, oh, I have to follow those lines. You don't want to. What I'm going to do is make a little path here with my yellow. This is Winsor yellow. And I'm negatively painting around the flowers, although I don't care if a little bit of color goes in it. And then I'm going to come in with some Quin Gold. Love this color. And again, Quin Gold doesn't move much in water. I can put this color next to my subject and it hardly moves at all. And I'm going to probably give this a warm dominance, so I do need to take some of my quinacridone coral here and start getting some colors on the edges here. Maybe design my path through here. I always like to go at a little bit of a zigzag and bookend the color over from one side to the other. And I love to go over some of the colors I've already painted. So you're getting a little bit of blended color. See how that's orange and that's pink? We love that. Absolutely love that. I think I'll just pull a little bit of pink down here too. A little bit over here. Now the last color I'm going to add is just a little cobalt. It's a beautiful color that has no yellow in it, no blue in it, and it just gives you a nice clean color. Okay, as I put this color, this is my cobalt blue now, as I put this color over all three colors, see what I'm getting? Some lovely grays. I just love gray in the background. You don't want the background too bright because really this picture is about the Calla lilies. So if some of the colors are gray, we like that. And then I'm going to pull just a little bit of this blue over the pink, hoping to get a purple. By gosh, it is kind of purple. That's unusual. Cobalt doesn't like to be anything but blue. So now we have a nice little selection of underpainting colors. If you want to, you can take your brush. This is a flat brush. And if I wet this brush, wipe it off. This is called a thirsty brush. And some of the colors that ran into my subject, I can pull them back out again. I don't actually mind if some of the colors run in. But sometimes it's a little irritating. You know, these are white flowers. So I think I will lift out just a few of these areas. I had a hard edge there. Just lost that. Now be careful that you don't have water. If I had water on this brush too much, it would bleed out. And you're creating more problems than you're solving. So make sure your brush is almost dry. It's called a dry brush. No, it isn't. It's called a thirsty brush. Okay, enough there. Now what I want to do is just to create some of these lovely textures in the background. This is an unru paper, and it's very fibered. It's just a wonderful paper. And what I want to do is just put little pieces. Don't put large pieces. Try to stay out of your subject. But sometimes I see people putting down pieces this big. No, keep them small, press them in. And see, my paper is starting to dry now, so I have to go into this with my sprayer, press into this with my finger, and get these papers to really bond. Just really be stuck on there. Now I have a little bit of that paper going into my subject. That's okay. Just a little bit's okay. So down here we're going to have some lovely grays. And these are just kind of randomly put down. No big deal. Just keep them small. Don't let them get big. And don't leave any white shapes. Keep pressing them around. Usually if I put one on that side, I like to come in and put one on the other side too. You can see, ooh, it's really getting dry down here. So we'll show them who's boss here. Just spray into it. And I try to touch all the corners here. Now, if you are a person, you just don't care for collage, this mixed media isn't your thing, just skip this part. I just love it, so I tend to probably overdo it, but it's just something I love. And see, I really like the changes in color. And what happens when you come back and paint that background in later, these little changes are just going to happen. You don't have a lot to say about it. It just happens. So you notice I sprayed them all. They're all pretty much stuck into the surface now. Yes, beautiful. And now I'd like to do just a little bit of color sanding. So just find a placement. This is a new stencil I just got that I like because the letters are small. You want to think about the scale. And see, I'm going to be color sanding into this stencil And there's some yellow and some red. So I'm going to get my yellow, red, and orange pencil. These are watercolor pencils. This is a 140-pound sandpaper. And what I basically do is I sand yellow into the yellow, and then I sand orange or red into the red. Now this will be just a little bit darker. Cool. Oh, love it. Just love it. Let's do a little one down here. So again, we're in, now I use the same sandpaper, so I get more color than just the color I'm sanding. Now my plan is to not paint these outer edges, and then I'm going to design some stripes to break it up. The last thing you have to do is a little fine mist. You hold your hand up high, and with a little fine mist, with your hand moving, see how my hand is always moving, and you spray into those. When you spray into these, what you're doing is you're bonding that with the paper. You're bonding those little particles of watercolor with the paper. And if you don't add this extra water, it won't work. It just won't work. And I see I've got a number of little spots in my subject. Actually, I kind of like it. So we're going to let this dry, and then I'm going to glue down the papers using Yes Paste, and then we'll come back and draw in our stripes and continue. Well, I'm back. All those little pieces of Vanru paper were glued down with Yes Paste. I have it right here. Let me show you. It's very thin. It was Yes Paste that I thinned down a great deal. It takes quite a while to do this. I like to add the water to the Yes Paste and let it slake down for a couple days just to soak in. And I just do like the top part of it and mix it up. So it only took a minute or two to glue these. I didn't have that many pieces there. So now we're ready to paint over those. And the big thing is designing the shapes. I'm very excited about this. When you start designing shapes, one thing you don't want to do, for example, let's look at it. This will be easier to see. You don't want to have what we call a tangent. In other words, if I made the first line here with this just touching, it would flatten the picture out. But by moving the line over here, now this definitely is in front of that background. And this is true for every one of these areas. See, you always design it so something is sticking out over it, not next to it, over it. So I'm going to start designing these shapes. And this one, well, I'm going to do that same position. I like that. And one should definitely measure these because it's real frustrating to get this far and then realize that your lines are crooked. Now you know you can do them diagonal, you can do them from the corner, but I want these just straight. So I'm going to, when I get to the subject, I stop and then I start again. And it's that simple. We're just going to design these lines to go through to the bottom of the paper. It's so funny how I came up with this idea. It's such a simple idea, it just kind of blows my mind. So now I want to do another simple shape here. This looks pretty good. I'm double checking to be sure I don't have any obvious tangents. Again, when you're drawing the line through, stop and start. Don't draw through your subject. And then if you have any lines that are not necessary, like that little one I goofed up on there, then you should erase them. It just takes a minute. I'm going to do a real narrow one. I think that'll be fun. And this is where I wish I had a transparent ruler because I could see. But I'll just switch it to the other side here. This should work quite well. So I've got a wide line, a narrow line, a line the width of the ruler. So I'm going to make darn sure these are all different. I don't want them to be the same. And then I'll run off the page here. And then the last one is fairly obvious because I do want this little tail sticking out. I could go out here, but see, there'd be nothing breaking into that area. It wouldn't be as interesting. Now, I have to tell you, when I designed this one, I showed this in a class with a group of decorative artists. And decorative artists know about patterns and things. And she said, Karlyn, you really did that wrong. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, look at, you should measure and do the same distance here as here. See that? And then my lines would be straight. As I just did them freehand. I just set them down. Look at them on this side and this side. And so they're, when I hang this, they're not going to be straight. But in a way, I kind of like it with this asymmetry because these aren't straight either. They're all just coming in at funny angles. But you can see what I mean. So if you're the kind of person who like things perfect, then what you would do is measure this distance, and then you would measure this distance, and that would be your first line. And you won't have this kittywampus look. So let's get back to painting this. Now the real exciting part is what colors am I going to use? And see, I really want to go into some dark colors. So I'm going to use my Antwerp blue. This is a color I really, really like. It's a very, very strong color. I can go almost to a value 9 with this. So you can see using Antwerp gives me this really strong value. So I'm going to start here with this very dark value. And then I just have to negative paint around all these shapes. Now I have to be careful to kind of bookend. So the same dark in here has to be the same dark out here. Now I can use a little artistic liberty from here till the top of the paper. So what I'm going to do is just take some water and push this in and go lighter towards the top of the paper. Because I don't want the whole thing to be the same. You can see some paper in here. It's kind of fun. I think I'll go just a little bit darker here. So what you want to show is this color going into a mid-tone and then ultimately going into this lighter color. So let's do the same thing now on the other side. Then over here now, I'm going to start going lighter all the way to that line. Wet my brush, shake it out, and come in with some water by pushing the light color into this dark color. Actually just pushing water. So I have a light top. That's fun. Now what I want to do is change this color. And if you think about just going around your palette harmonically, the next color would be a magenta. So I'm now going to come in and put this magenta here and push it in. Put it here, push it into that blue, and start working my way down with my transitional color. And I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. I'm going to take a little bit of that blue and bookend it over to the other side. And then I'm going to take my permanent magenta and push that in. I call this push it back, just like the old cheerleader. Push it back, way back. We're in our transitional color here. And now comes the fun part. Now I'm going to go into this really bright color. And see, my plan is to do a path of these beautiful warm colors so your eye can move across horizontally with the color. And then the vertical lines are very obvious going up and down. So we still need a passage that takes our eyes across horizontally. So now I'm going to change it into quinacridone coral. And the way I do this is I start the color here, push it into that beautiful magenta color, again forming another transitional color. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put this really bright color and push it back into the magenta. This is the inside of that leaf, so we're done there. Now I'm going to come in with some brand new color again. Start here, push it in. So you can see in one turn, we've gone from the transitional color into the pure color. And whatever happens on one side has to happen on the other. So now I'm going to just keep pulling this. And I want it really bright, so I'm just going to put lots of color on here. You can see every time I hit a paper, I get some kind of interesting pattern. I love that. I know there are a lot of people who don't care for mixing up the collage. If you're one of those people who doesn't like the collage, just skip that part. It's not really essential to the lesson, it just adds a little depth. Okay, now I'm ready to go back and reverse this again. Keep the color real fluid because I don't want it to dry. I'm working on dry paper, so I don't want this to dry. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reverse it again. I'm going to go back to the magenta, which I'm going to start out here. Start out here and push it back. And I'm going to form this transitional shape. I'm not following the lines very good here. There's little tricks to clean that up, so if you have that problem, don't worry about it. Now see, the colors are going to change depending on the colors that are in the background too. So I'm going over some yellow and it graded down a little bit. And if you don't like it, just get over it because it's not going to change. It's part of the fun. Now I'm ready to go into my Antwerp again. So this time I'm going to start the Antwerp on the other side, push it into this wet area, move that transition. See, there it is. We've gone from coral to magenta to blue. And now I'm just going to carry the blue all the way off the bottom of the page. So this is still a blended color here. And let's see, that's a stem there. So now I'm going to go even darker. I'm going to put a little more color and just go really nice and dark like I did up here. So I have it really dark going off the bottom of the page. So we have one stripe down, and you get the idea how important it is to have your color, do the transitional color, go into this bright color, back to the transitional color, and out. And what I want to do now is design another shape. First of all, I have to pull these colors over to the other side. See, I made this very big. I thought you'd enjoy seeing it quite large. So now I still have to fill in the transitional colors over on this side. And over here, oh good, they both happen to be the same one. And now we're starting the Antwerp, so we'll push that back in there. Now if you want these straight edges perfect, what you can do is put tape down and burnish the tape. But I kind of like just to paint them freehand like this because it's nature and they're never real perfect. It doesn't bother me that some of my edges aren't perfect. I think in the end it works out pretty good. Now what I want to do is start thinking about my movement of this color, this wonderful bright color here. Because that's going to form a path going over to the other side. Pretty much all Antwerp from here to the bottom. So that's going to give us our first stripe. Now one of the things I want to do is I want to carry this color over here and go off the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this so that I can get at it a little better. And I don't want to take the color exactly out. See, I want to start it up a little higher. And so I'm going to start it up in here, end it about here, and go up a little higher here. Go around this cute little curly Q. And now it's a matter of coming out the other side, what I call bookending. And then what I want to do is I want to lose these edges into a beautiful lost edge. And I have to do that while it's still wet. So the first thing I'm going to do is lose this edge here, coming out here. Then I'm going to carry this beautiful color bookended over to the other side. And then I'm just going to go a little bit further. See how I'm in a yellow area? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this yellow, start it on the outside, and push it into an acridone coral. And here I'm going to end it in this beautiful yellow. So we're going to go from coral into yellow. That's very cool. We could take a little bit of this blue, maybe change the color of the blue. I think I'm going to go into a manganese. It's going to look kind of green because, see, it's on top of yellow. So I'm going to put this manganese here because this is a white flower, and I pretty much need to pop it out with a little color. So see how it's turning green now? And I'm just going to let this in. So I'm going to wet my brush, lose this edge, let it just sort of melt out into the papers and the stencil in some of these lovely colors. So I'm going to turn this on the side so I can fit into all these crevices. It's pretty hard to do it the other way. And just get dark enough so you can pop out that flower. Oh, this is fun. So one of the good things about this lesson is you learn about transitional colors, and you learn about colors that you overlay. See how beautiful that is? This overlay of color. So it's blue, but it's also green where it overlays the yellows. So we get a lot of nice variety. So look at that, we're almost half done already. So what I'm going to do to complete this is I'm going to start where I want my red pattern. This time I'm going to drop down, so I would start the red here and end it. Come out with a hint of red up here and go into maybe a light color blue. And then I'm going to start working my red pattern up. So we're going to end up, well, maybe, with this color sanding right in the middle. I don't want to lose it, but I don't mind painting over a little bit of it. So I'm going to move my pattern, like I said, up here, finishing up in here, covering up a bit of this. And then we'll have to do just a little bit of color down here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my next beautiful coral color here below that. So I'm going to start it here, pull it down. So your eye is going to track horizontally across the picture, but it's going to be in these beautiful movements. Now I'm going to start changing the color. As I come out down here, I'm going to go into a gold, quinacridone gold, one of my favorite colors. So that means I'm going to have a little transitional orange. Now with a clean brush, I'm going to come in with more gold, start on the dry paper, push it into the orange color, and there, see how we ended up with the gold. So we've got the gold, orange, red. Now up here, we're going to come out of this, we're going to bookend this just a little bit here. You can't have one color on one side of your piece and a different color on the other. So now I'm going to go into a light blue, I think. So I want to have a contrast to the next door, but I want to get that glow of that color coming out. See how it's turning into a lovely purple transitional color there? Ooh, this is working out better than I thought. I'm going to add just a little bit more purple here. We'll leave that nice bright color because that really feels like I'm bookending. Now I'm going to come in with my Antwerp again and start going dark. Every time you get to an edge, you want to try to go darker so that you can see the stripe. It's part of the fun as we design this stripe in here, so we want to be able to see it. Always double check your bookended color. So whatever color it is here, it should come out that color on the other side. Then you start your transition and keep going all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and we'll just overlay the colors. Okay, my paper is dry. Now I'm ready to come in and do the finishing on the white flowers. And this is important. What you have to do is wet some of these areas first, because this particular flower has just got these real subtle colors. So I'm going to wet the center just with water. Pull it out here to the end. I want to make it kind of a light green, so I'm going to start with my yellow. I would never just use green. I like to mix my greens on the paper. So by putting this bright Winsor yellow down first, and just allowing it to kind of melt out into this white. And they usually have a little tip that's colored too, so I'm going to make that a little bit brighter yellow. Then I'm going to push it even a little bit darker right in the corners here. So we've got a darker yellow going into a mid-tone, going into the white, and then coming around here and toning that. For my blue, I've chosen manganese because I used manganese over here and I used it over here, so I need to pull it into my center. So just coming in with manganese blue. And when it touches the yellow, it will form green. And now I can just kind of let this by itself pretty much, although I'm encouraging it a bit with my brush. Just let that flow out into a nice lost edge. Oh, that's beautiful. Nice, I like it. And so I'm going to do this again now up on this lovely flower. First thing you do is wet it. I'm just going to wet it here, even though I don't plan on painting here, because you want that edge to slowly melt out. Again, I'm going to start with my Winsor yellow. Winsor yellow is a color that loves to move in water, so it's real fun. If you touch this into a wet area, it just automatically flows. See how lovely that is? Now I'm going to come in with my manganese. Same thing, I'm going to tuck it into these dark crevices here. And then I'm going to turn this so that the colors will flow. And then I'm also going to take my brush and kind of even it out a bit. There we go. I just love to have these little tails a bright yellow. So again, I'm going to paint those little tails. Just have a nice lost edge. Beautiful. Now all the colors underneath a big ledge of flower like that has to be a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is wet this and start doing the reversals. Can you see how this is in a light area, so I have to make it dark? So I'm going to start here with some Winsor yellow again. Then I'm going to flow this Winsor yellow down the stem. Then I'm going to come in with my manganese blue again. And just get a little bit of that lovely green. Pull it down the stem. And then I'm going to add Antwerp. See, manganese is a color that doesn't go beyond about a value 5. And I want to go darker. And I like to have just a little glow of some of that light color in there too. And then I'm going to start using some purples. See, there's this beautiful permanent magenta in here. So I'm going to add just a little bit of that permanent magenta. And then I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm just going to press into the wet paint and see, it will give you those gorgeous lines. And if you look carefully at the flower, they really are there. So now we're at the stage where we need to paint what's behind. Like this leaf, this one is behind that. So all those get painted first. Okay, I'm going to start down here by wetting it first. And you know how I feel about greens. First of all, we're going to put in the yellow and let that float out. Then I'm going to come in with my Antwerp because it's a little bit darker than the manganese. And I want to keep the edges light because we're next to a dark. And then it won't hurt if I want to get just a little bit darker out here because I'm against a light. So it's all about reversals from now on. So I'm going to come in here and make this even darker till I feel we have enough contrast. We're starting to get it now. A little bit darker in here. Pull that out. And then just to be sure we don't have any hard edges here, I'm just going to wet it and soften it just again. Nice. And I'm going to take my knife, and unfortunately I drew these lines in, so now I got to follow those lines. Should have left those out. But it's really nice to incise these lines while they're wet. The paint runs into it. And this is really what those leaves look like. They have very prominent lines. So now we can just pick up a little bit of this mixed color and paint some of these that are against a very dark background. All they need to be is a light, practically a yellow. So I'm going to do a few of these that are in the background here. Always start the furthest back. So this is the petals that are the furthest back, so we'll wet those. And then we're going to put, first of all, just a little bit of yellow. Then I'm going to come in with some purple. Now, yellow and purple are complements. So what's going to happen is this is going to gray it down quite a bit. And that's what I want. I want a gray. And again, these colors don't like to mix too much, so I'm going to soften the edges so we get a lovely transition going from a mid-tone to a light. And this is how we're going to continue. I'm just going to paint, starting in the back, these light colors. So what I'm going to do is just continue here. So I'll just simply go ahead and paint these. Well, you can see I finished this painting. It was all finished on dry paper. When I did do all of these sections, I wet just the area that I wanted that soft look. Started with the yellow, added the manganese blue, let the colors just flow, and it was really, really, I think, a very enjoyable piece. I do enjoy all these textures that were created by the collage papers. My main goal was to create a vertical compositional thrust in the background, and then to have this counter movement of the red going through. And I'm actually quite pleased with the way that came out. You saw how I started here with the blue and then went into the purples, then into the reds, back into the purples, back into the blues. And each one of these has a harmonic sequence. So that's why there are no muddy colors. See how clean it is when you go from the blue into the purple, into the red, back into the purple and the blue. So it was kind of fun creating these passages. There were a number of passages I did have to adjust. Like this one here, I ended up going darker to have a contrast. So you can see there's a contrast pretty much between every one of these stripes. And that was part of the fun of designing this. Very last thing I had to do was to create a contrast between the stems so that they stayed light against the dark background and dark against the light background. So I hope you enjoy the challenge of doing this. I mean, it looks really simple, just stripes in the background, but really it was a challenge to carry off the passages of negative and positive. I hope it goes well for you.